Sometimes the hardest part is getting started. I went through this process of trying to record this episode while I was in New York a couple weeks ago, and I actually went through 3 iterations of recordings. The first one, I wasn't quite awake yet and didn't like the way that my energy was feeling. The second time, I had a tech issue, and then the third time, I thought it went really well. But there was this echo in the background coming from my hotel room that I just could not feel right about sharing. I think that it was a blessing in disguise because I was super tired that week. I was not getting good sleep. And I basically told myself, let me get myself to a place where I feel like my energy is up and I can use all of this awesome energy to do this podcast because I want to start it right. And then over the weekend, I was reading a book for my book club. And this is a fiction book, mind you. But there was a conversation that was happening that was talking about accomplishment, and I wanted to share it. It's from the book Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. And hopefully I can not go in too much context about what this book is about, but here is the passage that I'm going to read. So a little bit of context. There's a male and female character that are talking about what people care about when it comes to accomplishment and when you stop caring. So here's how it goes. She says, "When do you think you stop? When you're 40? When you die? When you win a Pulitzer?" And then the guy says, "No, not then, because then, suddenly, they're incredibly proud, but they're proud of the accomplishment, not of the work. So you feel like you have to keep accomplishing instead of just creating. It affirms the idea that the value in what you do is how people react to it, and not just in the making of it. I've written stuff I'm really proud of that hardly anyone read. I've written stuff I'm proud of that no one liked. That doesn't mean it didn't deserve to be written." Then it goes on to say, "How many of your favorite shows got canceled? How many of the best albums barely sold when they came out? I mean, It's a Wonderful Life was a box office flop in its time. If everyone who worked on that movie had known, could see how things were going to pan out in the short term, would they have even bothered to make it? And then the world would have lost out on something beautiful. Just because something doesn't make money or win awards doesn't mean it doesn't have value or doesn't deserve to exist. The job is alchemy. You take a hunk of rock and you try to turn it into gold, and the gold isn't even really the point." So this kind of puts in a nutshell what I'm here for. What is accomplishment? What are we working towards? What is the point of it all? So let's get started. The whole concept of the accomplishment project came up a number of years ago after I wrote my first book, Finding Success in Balance. There was a lot of things that were going on at the time that my book came out, and I was super proud of what I accomplished because let me tell you guys, it is hard to self-publish a book. And I burned myself out trying to do that. And it's funny because the book is all about work-life balance and how you can avoid burnout and create a life on your terms, but I burned myself out doing something I love. And it got to the point where I was starting to debate, okay, what's next? How do I move forward from this? And I knew that I didn't want to go through that experience again. I really wasn't excited about publishing another book ever again. And then the pandemic happened, and there was all of this flurry in my mind trying to realize what was important. And in those few years that we were navigating being at home, living in an online world, I realized how important, and I guess it was a reiteration about how important my family was to me, and really just working on the things that brought me the most passion. But there's still this part of me, and for those of you who know who I am an overachiever. I am a perfectionist. I love to accomplish. I love accomplishment so much that I had it tattooed on my arm, along with my other top values. And I was met with this feeling of, like, what would happen if I just didn't want to accomplish anymore? What if the accomplishments that I wanted to set forth doing weren't sexy or weren't going to get me certain accolades? Because I started seeing that my interests were like, oh, I just want to clear the clutter in my house. I just want to be able to get 6 hours of sleep. I just want to spend more time connecting with people that really matter to me. And I wondered, why do I care so much about accomplishment when the things that I want to do are not snazzy anymore? And of course, that turned into, maybe I should explore this a little bit more. So throughout the pandemic, I read a whole bunch of books. And this is funny because, truth be told, before I became an author, I did not read that many books. I just didn't have the time. But of course, with the pandemic, I'm like, okay, I have more time. And I found myself drawn to self-help books and memoirs. I also started reading more fiction books as well. But I just learned so much from that process of diving into other people's works. And I liked self-help from the perspective of, here's a challenge that you're facing, and here's how we overcome it. Here are the steps. But what I loved about memoirs was this idea of reading people's stories. And granted, these are people who are famous, who have lives that maybe we normal people can't understand. But it was still so nice to be in somebody else's story and learning from their experiences so that I wouldn't have to. And I came up with this idea of, I want to hear more stories. I just love being super curious and asking people what makes them the way that they are. How did they become the people that they've become? And that lights me up. I actually like it more than giving me the step-by-step process on how to overcome whatever it is that I'm experiencing as a challenge in my life. And so there were two books that I had read that were immensely impactful in creating this book project that I'm about to share. And that was Gretchen Rubin's The Happiness Project and Jia Zhang's Rejection Proof. Both of those books were somewhat a blend of self-help and memoir, because there was a project involved and an exploratory experience that helped them arrive at the answer. What is happiness? How do you be okay with rejection? And I looked at accomplishment from that lens. I know what I think I feel about accomplishment, but that's my story. And you guys have already kind of heard my story if you've read my first book, because it is a little bit of a blend of self-help memoir, which is actually funny because when I was asking AI to summarize my book in 3 sentences or less, they said it was a self-help memoir. So anyways, I digress. So I thought to myself, what if I could do some research on accomplishment, but not just from my lens? Because I do think that some people do like, give me the step-by-step process on how to do this thing, whereas other people may not want to hear the step-by-step process and they want to go on that journey on their own, which is definitely me. And so I thought, how cool would it be to create a project around accomplishment. Not just the step-by-step process of how to accomplish or what accomplishment means, but have people's stories back that up. And of course, being an engineer and caring about science, I'm like, I need enough data. So I thought, what if I create this self-help memoir book project where I could bring those things together and give people the opportunity to learn by a culmination of data and science, but also learn through stories. And the Accomplishment Project was born. So, what I had started to do in this process was creating some of the structure on the self-help side, things that I have been learning in the work that I've been doing, supporting many people on their goals and helping them create intentional lives for themselves. And then there was also the aspect of, can I create data or can I conduct some experiments to figure out if my structure is valid or will I learn something new? So I definitely shared this concept with my editor who helped me on my first book project, and she loved it. We put together a outline for us to work from, and there was obviously the self-help aspect, but then also the interview aspect and the data gathering aspect. So I worked on the more self-help aspect because I had already done a lot of work in identifying certain things that I think will help lead people to accomplishment. And then once I gathered all of that information, I wanted to shift over to the interview portion. So my goal was to interview 100 people. And I think I kind of hit a wall at that point because I was really struggling with enjoying the process of writing. I was having all of these memories of sitting down, thinking about what to write, agonizing over the structure of what I was writing, constantly having to start over with a process. And it got a little bit stagnant. I have been working on this book project since the idea came up in 2021, and now it's 2025. And I just feel like I got to a point where it wasn't fun anymore. And did I really want to do this project? And I did, but I had to really think about what was going to make it more fun. And this is something that I work on with a lot of people because you really want to enjoy the journey. You don't just want to do things for the sake of doing them. So I am part of a community that I run called the Accountability Success Circle. And one day in a meeting, my friends posed the question to me, well, what would make it fun for you? And at that point, I felt like I was missing out on a lot of connection and community. And I'm like, maybe I just need to dive into the interviews. And I had been toying with the idea of doing a podcast for a really long time, but I was really turned off at the idea of how much work that was going to be because this is not easy. And I've been working on launching this podcast for a year now, and it takes time to really do something the right way. And I've always done things prior by just jumping into it and getting it out there and trying to figure it all out later. And I realized that is what caused all of this overwhelm and burnout. And so I had to take things slow. But I realized that doing this podcast would allow me to share what I'm working on sooner. And I think because I didn't have that external accountability to share what I was working on, and because I was also holding on to a lot of the writing that I had done and not shared it openly because I wanted to save it for the book down the road that was going to be published, I wasn't able to adequately talk about in public spaces what I was working on, and people didn't have something tangible to take away to get excited about it. So, after talking to a number of people, really doing some research on what it took to turn it into a podcast, and also discussing with my children if they would be willing to help me as part of the process, I found all these ways to make this project more fun. And here we are. So This is episode 1 of the Accomplishment Project, and I am just super excited to be able to show you what I have been working on behind the scenes for the last 4 years. I wanted to share a little bit about who might benefit from this podcast. I think it's safe to say that if you value accomplishment, or if you resonate with the word accomplishment, maybe even achievement, success, this is a podcast for you. But I have seen in my life, at least, that my definition of accomplishment has been evolving. And I have a theory that as we age, as we get older, as we experience more things, that perspective does shift. And I want to examine that as part of this process. So if you are somebody who cares about accomplishing meaningful goals, not just goals, but meaningful goals, goals that are going to help you live the best life with all the days that you're here, this is for you. If you are someone who has experienced burnout, if you are a recovering perfectionist, a recovering people pleaser, a recovering overachiever, any of those things, I'm saying this because that is the persona that I am. And of course, being the host of this podcast, if you resonate with any of my life experiences, this can also be an inspiration for you, because I really do want to look at accomplishment from a different lens. When we think about accomplishment, I feel like a lot of people think about productivity. So it's like setting goals, achieving them, figuring out how to structure the goals so that you can take action every day, and all of the things that you have to put in place to make sure that you can check the box off and move on to the next thing, which is all important. But there is also an emotional side to accomplishment that I think needs to be explored. I am a very emotional person, and I know that I care about the things that I put out into the world. But I've also seen that some of the amazing things that I've accomplished, and I think there are people out there who look at me and say, wow, April's accomplished a lot of different things in her life. She's super successful. But I am just a normal person, just like everyone else, just trying to do the thing. And I also feel like in the last year or two, I've been a little bit more quiet because a lot of the accomplishments have been focused on the success of my family, or, little things that aren't as shiny and fancy. And I'm not the type of person to just put out all these things on social media to be like, look, I'm at this party, or look, I got this award, because I don't feel like those really mean anything to me anymore. I really care about the people that I impact. I really care about the little things that I put in place that make my life feel easier, more calm. And I don't know if the general public really cares about that stuff. And so I want to use this podcast as a way to showcase, and with my guests who will hopefully join me on this journey, be willing to be a little bit more vulnerable about what happens on this journey to accomplishment. Because, yeah, maybe I might blow up someday and have this conversation, and maybe my life will not be normal, but that's not what I'm working towards. I'm not working towards trying to be famous or have a certain amount of money. I really, truly want to explore this concept and give you, as listeners or watchers, if you're watching the YouTube version, an opportunity to see something different and to create a meaningful life on your terms. That's always been my MO since I've been on this journey of having the cheerful mind in existence. And I want people to know that sometimes the most powerful things that happen in our lives are the things that we don't share because we think it's not important to other people. So, what I'm hoping to accomplish through this podcast is to share a little bit more vulnerability. And I ask for those of you who are listening to be a little bit more open-minded about what may happen in this journey, because I actually don't know what the path is going to look like. But I want to have meaningful conversations about what accomplishment is and what are we trying to chase it for, or why are we trying to chase it. And I wanted to give you a little bit of a framework for how this podcast is going to work. One of the things that has been super important to me as part of this podcast is to make sure that I don't approach it from a place of burnout. So you will not be getting an episode every single week. I just am a one person show, and I will be starting to recruit help. I am getting some help from my kids whenever they can help, but I will be asking for help to bring this podcast to life. But right now, I am a one woman show and I can only do so much. I have a full time job raising my two kids and managing my home, and a full time job supporting my clients and the community that I run and writing this book. And burnout is not an option for me. So you will get podcasts when they are ready. And there will be 4 different formats that I will explore. First and foremost is the self-help type of episodes where there is a specific guideline or something to follow. Here's a step-by-step process to conquer this tactic, or here's a special tool and here's how it works. That would be an expert interview that can shed some light on the tools that can help you accomplish whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish. It might be mindset related or productivity related. The second type will be more of the memoir version of an episode, which will focus on a person's accomplishment journey, a story that is meaningful to them and what got them from the starting line to the finish line, or are they even finished, or to where they are now. There's a third format that I'm hoping to do, which tracks the memoir version more in real time, where somebody's working on a project in progress and we get to do checkpoints along the way to see how they're doing and all the pivots and the highs and lows. So it's like a memoir in process. And then the fourth format is a panel discussion. I think that many of us do a lot of similar things and take different approaches. And I would love to bring people together, multiple people together with different perspectives on a common goal and talk about the different approaches and what helps and what doesn't, just so that you can see that there are so many different ways to accomplish a goal. And in these formats, I'm hoping that these are bite-sized chunk episodes, right? I would love for you to be able to get through an episode during a commute on your way into work, or while you're on a walk with the dog, or just getting ready for bed. So something nice and digestible. So all of my episodes will be less than 45 minutes, hopefully. And if not, then I can break them into multiple episodes. But I know that if you're listening to this and want to listen, you're a busy person. And I don't want you feeling like you have so much to consume. I would rather you focus on quality, not quantity, because that's super important to me. Before I go, I wanted to share a little bit about the sponsor of the Accomplishment Project podcast, and that is the Accountability Success Circle. The Accountability Success Circle is a community that I have been running. It's small but mighty. Since 2017, that was established to understand why people care about the term accountability. So similar to this idea of investigating and getting curious about accomplishment, I was really curious about accountability. And what it really came down to was supporting people in that journey of accomplishing their goals. So the ASC has actually been the incubator for me to test out all of these theories that I have been learning about accomplishment. How do you actually accomplish a goal? How do you feel good about it? How do you make meaningful progress and change your life in a way that feels good to you? And so the ASC is instrumental in this process of defining accomplishment. All of the programming and all of the things that we have done thus far over the last 8 years has been to identify how do we feel good about the accomplishments that we're seeking at the end of the day. And you'll learn about that a lot in the journey through this podcast and the book project. But I'm not here to sell you on the ASC. If you want to check them out, it's in the show notes, accountabilitysuccesscircle.com. But this is a place where I have found my community to help me get stuff done in a way that feels good to me. And obviously, it is something that I'm passionate about because I do love helping people accomplish goals that are meaningful to them. So, as the sponsor of this podcast, feel free to check it out if you're just really wanting a community that you can connect with that can help you accomplish your goals. All the people that are a part of this community have different lives, come from different walks of life, have different goals that they're working on. But it is such a supportive community to help you work on whatever it is that you're working on. And the people are amazing and I love them and you should definitely check them out. But I wanted to make sure that I mentioned this community because without the ASC, I think this whole process of the accomplishment project would be that much more challenging for me. So there's a couple things that I want to share as we continue this journey together. I am not a clout chaser, but I also understand the importance of making sure that the work that I'm doing is being seen by everybody that it can impact and benefit. And so if this is resonating with you, please follow, like, subscribe on whatever platform you are digesting this content, whether it's listening or viewing on YouTube. Check out all of the things that I'm working on aside from this in the Accountability Success Circle and the Cheerful Mind. And the main place that you can check out everything that's happening with this project is by going to www.theaccomplishmentproject.com. There is a Substack page that link takes you to, which you can subscribe to and get all of the behind the scenes footage, all of the information when a episode drops, all of the things. And if you can also just do me a favor and let people know if you think that this podcast or this project can benefit them, please share as much as possible because I am one person and I will admittedly say that I am bad at, and I know that this is something that I need to get better at, but I am not the best at sharing all the awesome things that I'm doing. And that is definitely something that I am going to work on even harder as I go through this journey because I am passionate about this stuff and I don't want to do myself a disservice by minimizing the amazing impact that I'm making. So thank you so much. This is my first episode. Let's do this. I am so excited to go on this journey with you, and I will see you in episode 2. Bye-bye.